Hey there, my name is Paul, and this is Out of Neutral, a weekly vlog where we look to the Bible to get in gear and follow Jesus into the life he came to make possible. Now, today I want to talk to you about 3 things you can do to ease your pandemic stress. A global pandemic that's now in its 2nd year is testing all of us in different ways. Isolation, monotony, and the extra demands that come with COVID-19 have left many of us feeling worn out. While there's more stress, many of our usual outlets for stress relief are gone. And so much of our lives is beyond our control right now. We can't control the arrival of the vaccines, the extent of the restrictions, or when life will return to normal. But there are things that we can do to ease our stress. Writing while chained to a Roman guard and knowing that the people to whom he wrote might soon face the same kind of persecution, Paul explained how they could experience the peace of God. His words have given people peace ever since. And 3 lessons stand out. The first is this: stop waiting for joy and start choosing it. He starts by calling them to joy. In Philippians 4:4, he says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say, rejoice." Now, commanding someone to be cheerful sounds crazy. If something wonderful happens, of course I'll celebrate, but unless it does, feeling blah seems like the only reasonable response. And I'm not sure that Paul would disagree. His call to joy isn't just about positive thinking. He's not saying, don't worry, be happy. He's telling us to rejoice in the Lord. No matter what is happening in our circumstances, we can still choose to rejoice by thinking about all that God has done for us. If you know Jesus, you have reasons to celebrate. Thinking that we can only be happy once our circumstances have improved is just not true. So stop waiting for joy and start choosing it by rejoicing in who God is and what he's done. The second lesson is to stop worrying about things and start entrusting them to God. Commanding people to rejoice doesn't make any more sense than telling people not to be anxious. But that's what Paul does next. He says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God." Worrying is stressing about how you're going to solve a problem, while praying is asking in faith for God to solve the problem. The pandemic keeps stirring my anxiety and yours because there's so much that's out of our control. The more I think about it, the more stress it creates. But every time I pray about those same circumstances, I'm reminded that God is in control. He's got a good plan and I can rest in it. And those words, with thanksgiving, prompt me to think more about what God's done and not just about what I want him to do. When I do that, I worry less. Finally, he teaches us to stop focusing on all that's negative and start thinking about all that's good and true. After calling believers to rejoice in the Lord and pray instead of worrying, Paul's promise in Philippians 4:7 that the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. But he adds something else. If prayer was a defensive weapon, he now gives an offensive weapon in the work of rejoicing. And that's training our thoughts on what is good. He says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." Now, this line is unexpected because it comes right at the point in the letter where you might expect a rant. Paul could easily start going off about how unjust the Roman legal system was and how cruel the religious authorities had been. Had these things just not occurred to him? Obviously, I think they had. It wasn't that Paul was in denial about all that was wrong in his world, but he chose not to focus his thoughts there. Now, news these days seems almost deliberately designed to stir our outrage. And I understand there are some things we should be outraged about. But if that becomes our main focus, the focus of our thoughts, then stress and anger will result and joy will always elude us. We need to deliberately focus our thoughts on anything worthy of praise, Paul says. Now, I listened to a man recently share how a number of his relatives who had been disillusioned with the church had begun listening to online messages during the pandemic. As I hear the accounts of God's work in their lives, I couldn't help but thank God for the good that He's accomplishing in these difficult times. I felt a little lighter as a result. I need to focus more of my thoughts on the good and give less airtime to the outrage if I want to ease the stress that this pandemic can foster. May the peace of God guard your hearts and minds and lift your stress as you seek your joy in Him. Now that's all for this time. If today's video has helped you get out of neutral, share it with your friends and subscribe to join us on the journey.